The jungle was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, the kind of place where silence felt unnatural, and every rustle in the trees seemed to carry a hidden meaning. Deep within, in the shadows where the sunlight barely reached, a man crouched, his eyes locked onto his target. He wasn't just any man. He was a predator, a hunter, trained in the art of taking down his prey without hesitation. His name was Kai, and his reputation preceded him. His prey was a woman, known only by rumors that said she was nothing more than a weak, helpless individual, waiting for someone to claim her. To Kai, she was a simple target. The woman, they said, had no power. She had no family, no allies, no weapon. She was alone in this world, a pawn, easy to control. It was a job that would take no more than a few hours, a quick capture, and then he could return home to collect his payment. That's all it was supposed to be. That's all it would be. He could feel his pulse steadying, the calm before the storm. He knew every detail about her, every step she took, every place she frequented. She had a routine, always the same. And today, he had studied it like a textbook. She would be in the clearing near the waterfall by midday, alone, vulnerable. It was a perfect plan. Nothing could go wrong. He checked the strap of his weapon one more time, adjusting the holster and making sure his dart gun was ready. It was a silent weapon, designed for someone like her. Someone who couldn't fight back. Someone who wouldn't see it coming. His heart rate remained steady, calm. The jungle around him seemed to hold its breath as well, as if even nature knew the hunt was about to begin. His target was already there, walking into the clearing, unaware of the danger that awaited her. She was dressed in simple clothes, nothing that indicated strength or power. In fact, she looked fragile. She was carrying a small bag over her shoulder, walking along the edge of the waterfall, her eyes focused ahead, but not on anything in particular. She looked like a woman lost in thought, unaware of the world around her. Kai watched from behind the thick brush, barely a shadow himself. He could see her every move, her calmness, the way she seemed so serene in the chaos of the wild. To him, she seemed out of place. This jungle wasn't a place for the weak. It was a place where only the strong survived, and she was not strong. The hunt was close now. He waited for the perfect moment, just as he always did. She was nearing the edge of the clearing, almost exactly where he wanted her. His body tensed, every muscle prepared for the chase. She wouldn't escape. She couldn't escape. Without making a sound, he moved, stepping carefully from the shadows. His movements practiced, controlled. He crept closer to her, his boots making no noise against the damp ground. He could feel his breath growing shallow as he closed the distance. His eyes were locked on her, but she had yet to notice him. The predator was close now. He could almost taste the victory in the air. Just when he was about to make his move, something unexpected happened. She turned, her eyes meeting his for the briefest of moments. She didn't flinch, didn't gasp, didn't even show fear. For a moment, Kai thought he had misread the situation. She had seen him, but instead of running, instead of showing panic, she merely stood there. It was as if she was waiting for him, as if she knew he would come. The unexpected calmness unsettled Kai. He'd expected fear, terror even, but instead he found only an unreadable expression, a hint of curiosity in her gaze. His confidence faltered just for a second, but it was enough to make him hesitate. In that split second of uncertainty, she spoke. "You're here to capture me, aren't you?" Her voice was soft, yet it carried an eerie calmness. Kai's hand instinctively went to his dart gun, but he didn't pull it out. He froze. "How did you know?" he asked, his voice low, the question slipping out before he could stop himself. She didn't answer him right away. Instead, she took a slow step forward, closing the distance between them. Her gaze never wavered from his. It was as if she were studying him, as though she were assessing him, understanding him in a way that made him feel vulnerable. "I've known you were coming for weeks," she said finally. "I've known your every move, every step. I know you better than you think you know me." Kai took a step back, his mind racing. How could she possibly know that? He had been careful, No one had seen him. But this woman, this prey, how could she have known? He began to circle her, a wolf stalking its prey, but he could sense the shift in power. The roles were changing and he wasn't sure how to react. She wasn't afraid. She wasn't running. In fact, she was standing her ground as though she knew something he didn't. "Do you want to know why I'm not afraid of you?" she asked, a smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "Because I'm not the one who's trapped here." Kai's heart skipped a beat. There was something in her eyes, something that told him this hunt was not going to go the way he thought it would. The predator, for the first time in his life, began to feel the sting of doubt. Could it be that he wasn't the hunter after all? In that moment, he realized that this wasn't just another mission. This woman, this target, was not who she seemed. And the game had just begun. But as the realization hit him, the first taste of true fear crept into his mind. And for the first time, he didn't know how the story would end. Kai stood frozen, his eyes locked on her as if she were a mirage, something too strange to be real. The dense jungle around them seemed to close in, the air thick with the tension between them. He had expected her to tremble, to beg, to do anything that might confirm his assumptions. But instead, she stood tall, a slight smile on her lips, unshaken, as if the very presence of the hunter didn't bother her. It was a challenge, something he hadn't anticipated. For the first time, Kai felt a flicker of doubt in his mind. Who was this woman? How did she know about him? The questions began to flood his mind. He couldn't shake the uneasy feeling creeping up his spine. He had stalked dangerous prey before, but none had ever looked at him with such calmness. None had ever seen through him so easily. He forced himself to step forward, the coldness of his professional demeanor returning. He was the predator. He had to remind himself of that. "I'm here to collect a payment, just like any other job," he said, trying to sound confident, but his voice betrayed him. "You don't matter, you're just a target." She didn't flinch at his words. Instead, she took a step forward as well, closing the gap between them. The jungle seemed to hold its breath. Her eyes, the color of the deep ocean, never left his face. There was something unnerving about the way she looked at him, as if she could see right through him into the very core of who he was. "I matter more than you think," she replied softly, her voice almost a whisper. Yet it carried an air of authority that made his blood run cold. "You've been sent to capture someone far more dangerous than you realize." The words hit him like a punch to the gut. For the first time since he had stepped into this jungle, Kai felt something stir deep inside him. It wasn't fear exactly, but it was a strange sense of unease. The kind of feeling that a hunter gets when the roles start to blur. He had done his research. He knew what they said about her. A woman with no family. A loner. Someone who had been living off the grid, hiding in the jungle. But the way she spoke now so confidently suggested she was something much more. Kai had always trusted his instincts, but right now they were screaming at him to turn and leave, to not continue with this mission. "Who are you?" he finally asked, the question slipping out before he could stop it. He needed to know, he needed to understand what was happening. Her eyes softened slightly, almost as if she felt pity for him. "I'm someone you should have never underestimated," she said, her tone shifting to one of quiet power. "I am the one who's been watching you, not the other way around." Kai took another step back, his boots crunching against the fallen leaves beneath his feet. He had come here expecting an easy mission, but now something was very wrong. He felt as though he were standing on the edge of a cliff, and the ground beneath him was crumbling. "I've known about you from the very beginning," she continued, her voice calm, yet laced with an undeniable strength. "I knew you would come for me, and I knew exactly what you would do. You're not the first predator to come after me." For a moment, silence hung in the air. Kai felt like he was in a dream, his mind struggling to process the words she was speaking. She knew him. She knew his every move. How was that possible? He had been so careful, so calculated in his every action. And yet here she was, standing in front of him with an almost supernatural understanding of his every thought. The uncertainty gnawed at him. The woman before him was not just a helpless target. She was something more. Something dangerous. "Why are you doing this?" Kai asked, his voice shaking slightly. He could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. "Why not run? Why not beg for mercy? You have to know you're not going to win this." Her lips curved into a faint smile, but it wasn't one of amusement. It was something far deeper. "You really don't get it, do you?" she asked. "This isn't about running. It's not about begging. I'm not the prey here. You are." Her words hung in the air, almost mocking him, as if she knew something he didn't. For the first time, Kai felt a deep sense of confusion. He was the hunter. She was the prey. That was the order of things. He had always been in control. But now, he felt something slipping from his grasp. It was as if he were trapped in her web, unable to move forward or back. In an attempt to regain control, Kai reached for his dart gun, but his hand froze mid-air. The woman was watching him, her eyes never leaving his, and he suddenly felt foolish for even thinking that weapon would work. What if she already knew everything about him? What if she had already anticipated his every move? "You've come to kill me, to take me out like all the others," she said, her voice soft but unyielding. "But you're going to learn that I'm not the one who's helpless here." Something inside Kai snapped. The realization, though subtle, was undeniable. He had underestimated her. She wasn't just some lone survivor hiding in the jungle. She was far more than he had ever imagined. Kai stepped back, his mind racing. "What are you?" he whispered under his breath. The woman didn't answer him directly. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, her lips curving into a smile. "I'm someone who's about to show you just how wrong you were. You came to take me down, but now you'll see who truly holds the power." At that moment, Kai realized the true depth of his mistake. He wasn't the predator here. He was the prey, and the game had only just begun. Kai's heart pounded in his chest, a rhythmic reminder of the growing panic within him. His hand still hovered over his dart gun, but somehow, the weapon no longer felt like the safeguard it once was. There was a cold sweat on his brow, and he could feel the air thickening around him. She was standing there, still calm, still unshaken, but in her eyes there was something else now. Something that sent a jolt of fear straight to his spine. It was as if she knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that the tables were about to turn. "You can't do this," Kai muttered, the words slipping out of his mouth in disbelief. He was the hunter. He was the one who had been in control all his life. How could he, of all people, fall into the trap of his own prey? She didn't answer him immediately. Instead, she took a slow, deliberate step forward, her movements graceful but sure. Her eyes never left his, and with each step, her presence grew heavier, more intense. She wasn't just standing there anymore. She was becoming something. Kai could feel it in the air, the energy shifting, the very ground beneath him seeming to hum with a strange, unknown power. "You've made one mistake, Kai," she finally said, her voice steady, with an almost eerie calm. "You thought I was weak, you thought I was helpless, but what you don't understand is that I am not alone here. I've never been alone." At first, Kai thought she was speaking metaphorically, but then, as if on cue, the air around them seemed to crackle. The trees above them began to stir as if caught in an invisible wind. Kai looked up, his eyes wide with confusion. There was no wind, no breeze. But still, the leaves rustled violently and the atmosphere around them grew thicker, charged with an unexplainable energy. Suddenly, she raised her hands, her fingers glowing faintly with an ethereal light. The colors around her shifted. Deep blues, purples, and greens began to swirl around her like a mist, swirling in a way that defied the natural order. Kai took a cautious step back, his eyes locked on her. His mind was racing. This was no ordinary woman. This wasn't a helpless target. This was something else entirely. "What are you?" he asked again, his voice now trembling with a mixture of awe and fear. "I told you already," she replied, her voice low but powerful. "I'm not what you think. I am part of something much larger than you can comprehend. And now you're going to see just how wrong you were." Before Kai could react, the ground beneath him trembled. He stumbled slightly, his boots slipping, on the damp earth. His heart raced and a cold shiver ran down his spine. Something was happening, something he couldn't control, something beyond his understanding. He had trained for everything, every enemy, every confrontation, every situation. But this was unlike anything he had ever encountered. The woman's eyes flickered with a sharp intensity, and Kai felt a sharp, sudden pain in his chest, as though something invisible was squeezing his heart. He gasped, clutching his chest, but before he could even attempt to defend himself, she was already moving. With a flick of her wrist, a burst of energy shot out, striking a nearby tree. The tree splintered and fell to the ground, its bark charred and smoking, the forest around them now, scarred by her power. Kai's eyes widened in shock. This was real. This was no illusion. She was using some kind of energy, a power he couldn't even begin to understand. "Is this what you've been waiting for?" she asked, her tone suddenly dark, but filled with a quiet satisfaction. "I've spent years preparing for this moment, learning to harness this energy. You think I'm just a helpless woman? You think I can't fight back?" Kai had no answer. His mind was spinning as he tried to process the truth that was now unfolding before him. He had thought she was weak, a victim, but now he realized just how wrong he had been. She wasn't some innocent bystander. She was a force to be reckoned with. She lifted her arms again, and this time the energy around them intensified. The sky above darkened, clouds swirling, as if the very world was bending to her will. Kai staggered back, his heart pounding as he watched the ground beneath them crack and shift. The power she controlled was beyond anything he could imagine. "What is this?" Kai gasped, his voice strained. "It's not just my power," she said, her eyes now glowing with a bright, almost unnatural light. "It's the power of everything that has been ignored, the power of the earth, the power of the elements, everything that has been underestimated, and now it's time to awaken." In that instant, Kai felt a change in the air. A force stronger than anything he had ever felt gripped him. His body trembled with the intensity of it. Every step he took felt heavy, as if the very ground itself was pushing against him, holding him back. "Stop," Kai pleaded, his voice hoarse as if he could still try to control the situation. But deep inside he knew it was too late. She smiled, but it wasn't a smile of victory. It was a smile of quiet understanding. "You didn't think I could fight back, did you?" she asked. "You didn't think I had the power to take you down, but the truth is I've always had the power. I just chose to remain hidden. Until now." With that, she stepped forward, the energy around her growing stronger, surging like a tidal wave. The air seemed to vibrate with power, and Kai, now realizing the magnitude of his mistake, felt the grip of fear tightening around him. This wasn't just a battle. It was the unveiling of something far greater than himself. He was no longer the predator. He was the prey. And as the woman raised her hands one final time, the earth beneath them trembled, and the jungle seemed to fall silent. Everything paused, holding its breath. Kai realized with a shock that he had misjudged her from the very start. The power was hers, and she had just unleashed it. With the final surge of energy, Kai could only watch as the world around him shifted and changed. This was no longer his fight. It was hers. Kai stood in the center of the chaos, surrounded by the broken remains of the jungle that once stood untouched. The trees were uprooted, the ground cracked open like an old wound, and the air itself seemed to hum with the power that radiated from her. The woman who moments ago had seemed like an easy target now stood as the undisputed force in this fight. He had thought he was the predator. Now he knew better. He was nothing more than a pawn in a game he didn't understand. Her presence was overwhelming, a beacon of power and control, and Kai was starting to feel the weight of his own helplessness. His heart raced, and his breath was shallow as he tried to make sense of what was happening. She had turned the tables completely, her every movement now guided by an unseen force that Kai couldn't even begin to comprehend. But despite the overwhelming force she wielded, There was something calm in her demeanor, as though she was in complete control. She looked at him not with hatred but with a quiet understanding, as if she knew this moment was inevitable, as if she had always known what was coming. And Kai? He was still trying to figure out where he had gone wrong. You see now? She asked softly, her voice carrying over the desolate landscape. You thought you were the hunter, but the truth is, you were always the prey. Her words cut through the air like a blade, and Kai clenched his fists, frustration boiling inside him. He had always been in control. Always. He had never been the one to back down, to admit defeat. And yet, here he was, on the brink of losing everything, his mission, his reputation, his pride. He could feel the weight of his failure crushing him, but deep down there was something else, something stronger, a spark of defiance, of desperation. He wasn't going to let this end like this. He wasn't going to be beaten by a woman, by anyone, no matter what powers she held. Enough, Kai growled, his voice low but filled with determination. I've faced worse than you. I've survived things you can't even imagine. If you think this is over, you're wrong. The woman's gaze softened for a moment, a flicker of something akin to pity flashing in her eyes. It's not about what you've faced, Kai, she said, her tone gentle but firm. It's about what you're willing to become. And you've already shown me that you're not willing to change. You'll keep fighting, but you won't win. Her words hit him harder than anything physical ever could. She wasn't just talking about the battle in front of them. She was talking about him, the man who had spent his life hunting, controlling, conquering, a man who had never questioned his methods or his place in the world. And now, for the first time, that world was falling apart. Kai's mind raced as he looked around, searching for something, anything that could turn the tide. The jungle was still alive with the power she had unleashed, energy crackling in the air, the earth beneath, him vibrating with force. He knew that he couldn't fight her in the traditional way. She had power, something beyond what he had ever encountered. But there was one thing he had learned in all his years as a mercenary. When you can't fight the power, you fight the mind. With a sudden flash of insight, Kai reached for his belt and pulled out a small gleaming device, a tranquilizer dart gun, designed to be used in situations just like this. It wasn't much, but it was something. He didn't know if it would work, but he had to try. I may not have your strength, Kai said, his voice steady now, his eyes locking onto hers. But I've got one thing you don't. Before she could react, he fired the dart. The world seemed to slow for a moment. The dart flew through the air in a perfect arc, heading straight for her. Her eyes widened in recognition, but she didn't move. She didn't have to. The dart stopped mid-air, inches from her skin, and then it fell harmlessly to the ground, with a soft thud. Kai froze, his heart skipping a beat. How? How had she stopped it? I told you, she said, her voice now filled with a quiet finality. You can't defeat me with force, you can't defeat me with tricks, you've underestimated me, and now you're paying the price. Kai's mind reeled. The tranquilizer dart, a weapon that had taken down countless opponents, had done nothing against her. She had turned his own attack against him just like everything else. She had never needed to fight him. She had only needed to wait for him to realize that his strength, his cunning, his weapons, all of it meant nothing in the face of her power. He stumbled back, his breath coming in sharp gasps. I don't understand, he whispered, the words slipping from his mouth like a confession. How did you do it? How could you? You still don't get it, do you? She interrupted softly, her voice almost a whisper. You were never meant to win. This was never about me defeating you. It was about you defeating yourself. The real battle was always in your mind, Kai. You were so sure of your superiority, so sure that I was just prey. But now, you see how wrong you were. And that was it. The realization struck him like a hammer to the chest. This wasn't about strength. It wasn't about power. It was about perception. It was about understanding the world beyond what was right in front of him. The woman in front of him had done nothing except reveal the truth that had always been there. She wasn't just a victim. She wasn't just a target. She was the one who had understood something he had never even considered. She was the one who had won all along. Kai took a deep breath, the weight of the moment finally settling in. He had been beaten, not physically, but mentally. And as he looked at the woman standing before him, standing victorious, he knew that this was a battle he could never truly win. Not in the way he had imagined. Not in the way he had hoped. The jungle around them fell silent. The earth seemed to steady itself, the crackling energy fading into a quiet calm. And Kai, defeated but not broken, understood. The true strength wasn't in the weapons, the fighting, or the power. It was in knowing when to stop. And for the first time in his life, he knew it was time to walk away. She had won.